Welcome back to the Inting Podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest today. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Adler. I work at Riot Games on competitive operations for the LCS and esports.
So,
yeah,
how did you? We can just run into it. How did you be able to get that high of a position? If you don't mind me asking.
Sure. I can also answer that differently. I can go into more depth about who I am if you guys want.
Yeah,
more
we would love to know everything about you. Yeah, 100%.
Anything?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll redo the intro then if that works.
Go for it.
Okay. Everybody, my name is Greg Adler. I'm currently working on competitive operations for the LCS and esports at Riot, basically managing the day-to-day operations of the LCS as well as other esports at Riot, making sure the leagues can operate at the highest level, and basically handling all the back-end processes for the leagues.
Okay. So, like, you say, like, day-to-day kind of stuff, like, operations that you do, like, what kind of stuff does that entail?
So I think it's a kind of a mix of two things. So my formal role is competitive operations, but I think that's a mix of like competitive operations and league operations. And kind of what the two are is competitive operations is more of like, making sure the competitive integrity of our leagues is upheld. So, following the rules, issuing fines and penalties if necessary, making sure that there's no competitive integrity concerns like on stage and stuff like that. A lot of just making sure that, the competitors are held to the highest standards, as well as the league operation stuff is like, making the schedule, monitoring accounts for our players, doing behavior checks. I also manage the global contract database for North America. So it's kind of a mix of, managing kind of, inner relationships with teams, making sure they're kind of updated and they have all their information submitted at Riot, while making sure they're following all of our rules and policies.
Okay. Yeah. So, was League like Riot Games? Was that your first gaming job you entered, or did you work somewhere else before Riot Games?
Yeah, so I've actually had a little bit of a unique path. I actually so I graduated from Kutztown University in 2015, and I actually started as a music teacher.
Oh, wow.
But while I was music teaching, I did a lot of amateur TOing on the side, tournament organizing. So I ran my own amateur League of Legends league, but I also participated in a lot of different leagues. I used to do like amateur leagues I used to participate in, ARAM tournaments. And so from there, that's when I got the job as the esports coach at the University of Texas at Dallas. Was kind of a great opportunity for me, connected my love of esports and kind of, tournament organizing with my love of student success from my teaching experience. Mm-hmm. And so I ran that program for 3 years, and then that's when I ended up at Riot.
Nice. Just because you mentioned it, this is kind of off topic, but that's so cool that you went to school to be a music teacher. I went to school for music, for audio engineering, nice. But yeah. If you don't mind me asking, do you like what instruments do you play?
Sure. Yeah, I'm mainly a brass player, so I mainly did like marching band, orchestra, stuff like that. It's funny. I find that very often those that do music, I feel like a lot of the skills transfer into other stuff, mm-hmm. Because all the like even the problem solving and you have to do and like kind of the work ethic to practice your instrument and stuff is pretty applicable to a lot of other areas. So a lot of times when I hear people are from music doing other stuff, I find that like that connection to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's always interesting to see that like people of different career paths get into like gaming, because you'll have someone who's like a history major, you'll have like a philosophy major, and then they'll like somehow manage their way into gaming, because I feel like that's kind of an interesting way. Like, because you're not the first one. You see like even content creators also. It's like one of them was like Jonas. Jonas.
Average Jonas.
Average Jonas. Yeah, Average Jonas. He was like orchestra or something.
He was like an opera singer.
He was like an opera singer. Then he just became like a Valorant content creator. So it's like kind of interesting to see, because like now seeing yours. So because like music doesn't have really do much with what you're going into correct now, right?
Yeah, not too much. I think the education side of things definitely is pretty prevalent to what I do now, like, patience and kind of explaining things. I think that's kind of the beauty of esports as it currently stands, right? Is, at a professional level, esports is really only like 10 years old, if even.
Yeah.
Obviously it's existed for a long time, but at a pro level, really only like 10 years. So there's not necessarily like esports degrees. I mean, they are out there, but it's more so, using your experience in other things with your combination of your knowledge and experience in esports and gaming to like make that fit, because it's like, I mean, the reality is at this point, I don't think there's anybody that like came from gaming, right? They had it as like either an interest or something they were into or did it in one way or another, but it definitely wasn't like I've always been in my gaming career. It's always a mix of kind of your other stuff that you've done with your passion to kind of get in the scene, which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever see when you graduated and you said you became a music teacher, did you ever see like, I would really like to work at Riot? Or was it more like, I like this kind of doing like a little fun thing, let me do on the side, and then I'll have my being a music teacher as a main thing?
To be honest with you, like dream would be working at Riot at the time, but I just didn't think it was possible. Like where I was in life, I was like, my degree is music ed. It's not super relevant to esports, even though I do have the experience. But I knew that gaming and esports like was what I wanted to do. Like I knew that was my love all along and my passion, and that's why I did the TOing on the side and kind of the participating and stuff. It's because I knew getting relative experience to get me closer and closer would eventually get there. Definitely was never like an expectation, but always a dream for me for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned before that like part of your job is like maintaining like competitive integrity and stuff like that. Is that like a different kind of a way of saying like you're almost like a referee in some regard?
Sure. So we actually have referees as well. Referees. So it's kind of like two things of it. There's like match operations and competitive operations. Match operations is more like on the day in the middle of the match, like managing things. So like when there's chrono breaks that need to happen, when there's pauses for bugs, that's match operations. And that's where referees fall into. They stand behind the teams, make sure the teams are following the rules. If they have any pauses in game or any issues, they're the ones that communicate the info back to us. So I help manage our referee team. So I'm more like league operations than I am match operations. Although I still do match operations. Like I worked all of MSI and Worlds last year, and was a part of that. So still definitely have a mix. But I tend to do more of like the back end stuff, like making sure our policies and rules and penalties are in place. So when they do need to use them for match operations, it's organized and efficient.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that when you say day to day, I feel like it's because I mean there's two splits. So you're in the LCS, so there's like two splits. So what are the day to day operations when you're not in season, when it's like the off season? How is the work life going? Like what is your position? Like what do you do?
Sure. So it really depends. Last year, like I said, I went to MSI and Worlds. So that entire like off season was really just me at those international events. So obviously if I'm going there, there's that. If I'm not at the international event, a lot of it is just prepping for the next season, working on the schedule, managing our contracts internally, making sure because the end of a split, there's a lot of things you need to do, like processing the fines, processing pricing and stuff like that. So a lot of it is kind of just prepping for next split, but as well as next year, last month and a half, 2 months, I've been meeting with like all of the GMs and talent within our scene to kind of talk about, the league as a whole, our formats and stuff like that. A lot of prepping for the future and kind of being as proactive as I can if I'm not at those international events.
Yeah, because I know because we went to last year we went to Worlds because we're in Jersey. We're based in Jersey, so we went to the one in New York.
Nice.
By the way, amazing event. I think you guys killed it out there. And
cool shit.
I don't know if you were there in the New York one, but like we were there. It was genuinely one of the best because I went to we went to one playoff. I went to another day of playoff, and then we went to also group stage, one of the group stage ones. Genuinely one of the best environments.
Yeah,
I feel like
that was cool.
The community was such a it was definitely different because I mean you can always say like the memes around like league players and all that but like when we were there everyone was like such a chill, was like a vibe. So it's like how does planning like something like Worlds, like I know you said like it was a North American like tour, so like how stressful and like what goes on and like how many, like is it a year in advance of preparation, is it 2 years, how does it work?
Sure. So I was lucky enough to get to work all of Worlds. I was very thankful. But there's kind of two aspects of a part of it. The first part is like the actual larger scale planning of like the format and everything. That's more of like a global level, and that's definitely done as far in advance as feasible. Obviously the more proactive you can be, the better. As for actually working the events, it is quite stressful, but it's a good stress. It's just a high stakes situation. So I think teams teams are on their game because they want to be performing at the best. You have a lot of fans tuning in. So a lot of it is just making sure we're on our game. We're kind of handling issues as they come effectively. But we're also, like, I bring it up a lot, but being proactive is really big for us. Like trying to identify issues right away as soon as we can, and kind of solve them if we need to. But it's definitely stressful, but great stress. It's a lot of fun. It's super awesome to see these like teams of just insane high caliber playing against each other, and it's just really, really an exciting atmosphere.
Okay, so you mentioned that like working this stuff is like very high stress. I guess this leads to one of our questions, which was, what's the toughest part about your job?
I feel like stress isn't a good word because it's just I thrive in those situations. Where it's stuff's always happening. They need keeping you on your feet, kind of problem solving. I love being in those situations. I think toughest part of my job. I don't know. This is going to sound like a cop-out answer, but I really feel like there's nothing in particular. I feel like the thing that can be complex is the idea of it's a lot of unique problem solving. Like last year, as an example, at MSI, we had RNG, who's from China, play the entire event remote.
I'm sorry about that.
So while every other team at the event was in person, they were remote. So that was something that none of us in QC, or I said the comp ops crew, had ever done before in the history of like League of Legends. Anyone in that necessarily had not dealt with that environment. And so I think it just comes with a lot of unique problem solving, kind of identifying what the situation is, what are our goals, how do we kind of work around this, what's the best case we can get to. And so I think that can lead to a lot of unique situations, but it's fun to kind of work through those.
Yeah, because I was I was watching the MSI during that time, and to be honest with you, I didn't understand it, but you guys came up with like a ping system. Can you elaborate on that? Because I still don't understand what that meant.
Sure. So, long story short, we have these tournament realms, which are like basically servers that we host that are only for pro play, where we can set the region to be any region across the world, depending. We only have set locations, but like Los Angeles, Chicago is an example. And so when playing on the tournament realms, we had a server built, or we might have already had it, I'm not sure, that basically set everyone's ping to be around, I think it was around 30, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, that's
so
not
basically
bad.
if any of the players were playing on that server on that tournament realm, they were at 30 ping. But that's comparatively to like their normal, I guess they play like 1 or 2 when they play on LAN server. So definitely different. But as the event goes on, as you're playing on it for a bunch of weeks, it definitely gets easier.
Yeah, because I imagine, because like it was definitely different, because the entire event they were probably playing a 1 and 2. I think every time they played against RNG, they would have to switch to 30 ping. So I'm guessing it's like a bit of a different. I mean, it's still very low. I'm very impressed that you guys managed to make it that low.
Yeah.
Because MSI was where again? I think it was in Busan, correct? Like that MSI.
And for clarity, I'm pretty sure it was 30 for every match, no matter what. Just to keep it consistent across the board. I don't know 100%. I believe that's what we ended up doing. And that way every match is the same. But yeah, just for clarity.
Did you try ever did any like teams or like managers come up to you guys and be like, yo, like, was this like a bit unfair? Like, hey, can we try to maybe reschedule this another time? Like, has any manager come up to it? And if they did, like, in what way did you essentially how did you respond to it?
I think everyone kind of just realized that like the reality of that situation is that like they literally could not leave their country, right? Like, COVID's happening and they have to stay in their facility, and, they're being quarantined across the country. So it's not like they, are choosing not to be there. It's obviously completely against their will. So I think people understood that a lot, like the context of it. Like, look, they want to play. They're one of the best regions in the world, so it would be great to have them there. But they just can't get here. They literally can't. And so I think people understood that. Obviously there was questions, and concerns, but, address them as they come up. But I think with the context of kind of what they have to go through in the first place, outside of League of Legends, what they have to go through with COVID, people understood.
No, I understand. I mean, that's good. I like, you guys definitely handled that pretty well, because I saw a lot on Twitter was like the backlash behind it. It's like, damn, like people were even saying like RNG shouldn't even be playing because, it's online and everyone else's land. So like, but I'm very impressed that you guys I feel like that's one of the things with you, like with Riot. I mean, so like we watch the Valorant a lot, so we're like in the Valorant side of it. But we watch it, and I'm very, like, it's definitely impressive how like fast you guys react, because you look at other games and like they're not as quick on their feet as you guys are. So like, how does the preparation go when it comes to that? When you guys are like, okay, in case of this scenario, this is what we're gonna do, or is it more just like on the fly?
Definitely a mix of both. I think, it's obviously really important when you do have situations arise that you write detailed notes. So if the situation does come up again, you can kind of address it. I know for NA, we have like an instant log basically that we keep track of for every single day of the LCS, which is like all pauses, all, chrono breaks if necessary, all bugs, everything like that. And I know we have that we keep it consistently updated. So then that way, if an issue ever does arise, we can go back and be like, hey, this was the precedent we set. This is what we did in the past. So I think it's definitely a mix of both. It's being proactive using that kind of information, but also being proactive or using that information that if something does happen, that you can be like, okay, this is what happened. We're doing X, Y, and Z because of what we've done in the past. We're using these similar situations to help us determine our action in this situation.
Okay. Yeah, so it's almost like keeping some sort of database of like, okay, if XYZ fails, this is how we can go about it. That's cool.
Right. And the nice part is that a lot of that applies to like any events, right? Like we can take that information and bring it to Worlds and be like, hey, if a player has this audio issue, this is what we're looking to do. If a player has this tech issue, this is what we're looking to do, and kind of helps us, guide us a little bit to make better decisions in those situations.
Have any players ever asked like some like bizarre requests or anything before while you're like, hey, can I like listen to Spotify or something? I don't know if that's like a bizarre,
Sure,
but like something like that.
Oh, all the time. So the PCs that they play on stage, for context, are set up so they literally can't do anything other than basically play the game. Obviously there's a lot of like concerns with that, right? If let's say they have Spotify open and they have, who's to say they can't have like, I don't know, I guess what it could be within like music world, but they could have music that like, is their coach's recording basically saying like, don't remember 6 minutes, do this, remember 7 minutes, do this.
Okay.
And we truly have like no way unless we're like listening. That's like a crazy example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, all the time, I think it's kind of like an ever evolving world, kind of, with what they need. As we had a match this year where we were like about to get into champ select. We literally click start game, and one of the players is like, wait, I have like a sticky substance on my hand. I need to go wash my hands right now. So we had to have a run up the stage with like hand sanitizer wipes and like give it to the players so they can like wipe their hands. But at the same time, the team's in champ select, right? So you don't want to talk because you want them to focus. So you have to, it's kind of unique situations like that. But after a while, players, they kind of just get used to the process. They kind of figure out things. There's obviously a learning curve, but they kind of get the gist. They figure out how things are supposed to go. You always have your weird questions, but test the limits, see how far you can go.
Yeah, because I know in like games like Valorant and CS, when there's like a tech pause or something, like you're not allowed to talk within each other. Like I know like that's a rule where like you can't even talk to each other because like you can say code words where like, hey, like you can say something, oh, what we're gonna eat today. It's like, hey, we want to get Chipotle. It's like, hey, let's go do this, let's run this strat. Because I know that. So I don't know if the same thing like with that, if there's a tech pause or is there a pause, are players allowed to talk, or are they like complete silent?
Yeah, so it's pretty much exactly the same. It's kind of twofold. It's number one, if a team has like an issue on stage that they're dealing with like a referee with comp ops, they're allowed to talk about that issue. The thing is, in those situations, if that team is resolving issues with the referee, we don't let the other team talk, because that whole time that other team would basically have an advantage of being able to talk about the state of the game while the other team's actually trying to resolve a technical issue of some kind. And so that would provide a big benefit to that team at that point where they have like 2 or 3 minutes to talk about whatever they want. Similarly, if like a team has like an audio issue and they can't hear one of their players, the other team talking would be an advantage because they can hear each other and talk. So it really depends, kind of on the situation. Also if it's like kind of like a rune thing, like if we have to reset the game for a rune and we know that, talking at this time wouldn't give anyone a huge advantage, we can be pretty flexible as long as like no one's kind of getting a big break from it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think with that, like, because that's understandable, because like I feel like people don't understand, like it's kind of like a competitive integrity also, because like you want to have an even playing ground throughout. Also another thing, I know like the Riot HQ. This is like not like about a league, but like I know the Riot HQ is in the West Coast, but I mean like people like us like, who live in the East Coast, like New Jersey, the complete other side. Do you have any events or any plans of making more events towards the East Coast? Because I know the LCS Summer Split is going to be in Prudential Center, New Jersey, which thank God for us. That's the closest anything has ever happened to us.
Like 20 minutes.
It's like 20, 30 minutes from us. So thank God you guys decided that. So, do you have any plans of making more like including other like states like near the East Coast of more like league environment areas?
You know, I think there's just like a ton of complexities to going into choosing locations. I mean, I think, you know, obviously there's a huge desire for it to be on the East Coast, you know, not only just from this event that's happening, but even from Worlds. You know, New York was sold out like every day, and there was a ton of just a huge, great crowd. So there's obviously a huge like league community and huge desire to have events on the East Coast. You know, but there's obviously complexities to all of it, you know, depending on where we're going to host events and where we're going to go. But anything's really possible. I'm really hyped to go to New Jersey too, because I'm from Philly. I'm definitely from the East Coast life. So I'm hyped to go back there. You know, and kind of see the friends and family. So, and like, you know, even to that point, I had all my friends or a large group of my friends go to Worlds in New York and get to hang out. So it's definitely cool to give that kind of side, definitely an opportunity to watch.
Yeah, because I know it's like a lot of us, like, because I've talked to a lot of people and even met people online, just like, yo, they wish they could go to events, but everything else is either all in West Coast or maybe in Canada sometimes too.
Sure.
So like, especially because in VALORANT, like a lot of stuff happened in Canada or the West Coast. So like, we always like to want to know, like, if you guys like, even like in the nicest way possible, if you guys think about us in the way is like, hey, maybe we should try something, having like, you know, maybe one in Philly, one in Boston, maybe like sometimes like in Maine, like something along those lines.
Oh yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, you know, I think going to Prudential Center is a great example of that. You know, us going directly to the East Coast to have an event, and I mean, even Raleigh. You know, not necessarily that. You know, people like to think of East Coast as like Upper East Coast, but still East Coast to one extent. So I think there's, you know, obviously we want to get out as far as we can in general to like reach the most amount of fans. But like I said, just a lot of complexities involved with, you know, where we're looking to go, what we're looking to do. But I am very hyped to go to Jersey. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you ever come here and you need some places to go, we got you. We got you. Restaurants, everything, we got you.
Perfect.
So you work a lot with like league and stuff. How much league do you get to play?
You know, honestly, I would say I play a decent amount. I would say maybe like 2-3 games every other day. Like every 2 days, so it's an okay amount. You know, I think it's like I don't necessarily think it's a huge necessity, but I think it really helps a lot that I am as knowledgeable on the game as I can be. So I work on the partially work, I should say, or I should say, depending on what it is, but I work on the bug list for LoL esports. So a lot of it is like really intricate situations with like interactions with champions that you really have to know in depth the game. And so I don't necessarily use it to justify my league play. You know, I think I could learn the game, you know, other ways. But I think it helps. You know, I kind of keep myself in the know. I know what the meta is each patch. I kind of know what people are playing, and it also keeps my skills kind of, you know, up to date as much as possible.
What rank are you?
I'm currently Plat 2. Was Plat 1 before. I'm trying to get Diamond, but it's rough. But you know, I think at this point I mainly I feel lucky enough that my mental is at a place where I just kind of like jump in solo queue and I'm like YOLO, like I really don't care about my rank anymore as long as like I'm having fun, which I think you know, Greg from 5 years ago would be like, hell no, like I gotta grind, I gotta climb. So I think all of it is me just trying to have fun. You know, you know, I'll go into games and play like random support champs. I like to play like Swain and stuff like that and just have a good time.
Do you ever have any input on like agent balances or like champion balances and like, hey, you know, it'd be really cool if, you know, if we buffed Mordekaiser just a little bit, it'd be kind of fun to play more. Like, do you ever like slide that into the development team? Like, yo, it'd be nice if this guy kind of got a little buff. Would that be cool? Like, do you have any say in any of that stuff?
Dude, I wish. But I will say to that note, I have actually really enjoyed working with our gameplay team. They actually talk to esports quite a bit, kind of being like, we're thinking this for this patch, we're thinking about doing this. They're actually like incredibly receptive to esports feedback and ideas as a whole. And I think that's it really leads to a great relationship overall, especially like when we work on bugs and we have to go to them to get their feedback and like ask them to fix stuff. Like they're just really open to that stuff. And I think that makes for a better gaming experience. And I think our pros enjoy the game more because they realize that gameplay is doing stuff to actively help the esports scene, which is really nice.
Yeah. I feel like that's like one thing you guys as like a whole company when it comes to Valorant and League, you guys are very receptive. Like
quick turnaround.
Yeah,
on
like very
stuff.
quick because like someone will complain something on Twitter and some random not random but like any like Riot dev would come on and be like, actually we are fixing on that, and they'll just tweet it out randomly. So it's kind of like it's very different because like I came from CS:GO, so like
Get
talking
a patch
to
every year.
it's like we'll get a patch maybe once a year, or like it's probably easier to get in contact with the president than a dev in Valve. So it's like something like that. So it's like it's very like it's still kind of shocking, like in a good way, where you guys are like very receptive when it comes to like, hey, we know this is an issue, we are trying to fix on it, please be patient. Is it more just like, do you like feel like it's a better connection? Do you ever feel like when, of course you probably got like on Twitter, it's a different breed of people where you guys get like a lot of different comments where like, hey, fix this, bro, this is a stupid mechanic, can you fix this? Are you guys like, do you guys take that to heart more, or do you guys like, hey, we're listening to you, we'll take it into consideration?
So I think it, obviously really depends on what they're asking for and kind of, how feasible it is. I think one way or the other, how I like to view those situations personally is that, you obviously you always want someone to voice their feedback appropriately, right? You obviously don't want them to cross a line. But at the same time, the way I view it is if someone voices a concern or something they want changed, they care enough about the product or they're passionate enough about the game or esports that they feel that they need to mention this, right? It's the people that are like, man, this sucks, but I really don't give a shit, that are the ones that are not ideal, because then it's like, look, we want to help you, but if they don't care enough for the product to be good, like they don't want it to improve, then they're not going to voice their concern. We want our fans to feel comfortable enough that they can voice that to us when they do feel like they have issues with things. But I'm always looking at the subreddit, always looking at Twitter, always looking for ways to improve as much as possible. I think that's a really nice part is kind of, I don't want to say like lurker, but it's like, especially on the subreddit, I'm always reading threads, just kind of seeing what people are saying. And I think that's really valuable. Gets really good feedback. If there's things that need to be changed, maybe we don't notice it. It's always good to have the fans kind of, voicing their concerns.
What's the craziest Reddit thread or like tweet you ever seen someone complain about like your side of like the league? Like it's like, hey, this, like it's just wild.
Like the hottest take.
Like the hottest take where you're like, there's no way someone typed this up and posted it. Like, do you have any idea? Like you remember any?
Oh gosh. Oh man. I don't know if I have any. I remember last year I had posted that this was when they reworked Udyr. I had announced that Udyr wasn't going to be available for Worlds, I think is when he got reworked for. Mm-hmm. And some people were like, oh, no Udyr, like Worlds is ruined, like Riot doesn't care about Worlds, like there's no Udyr. And I'm like, damn, we got some Udyr fans out there.
It's like no one was playing Udyr a month ago. What the hell did this come from?
But hey, man, like if they want to see Udyr, I get it. He's a reworked champion. It was kind of cool at the time for what it is. So them Udyr fans out there, they go hard.
Yeah. When were you involved in getting Little Nas X for Worlds by any chance, or like were you involved in any of that? Like, because I need to know. Like, I need to know how you guys come up with like some of these like artists you get on board. I'm very curious, and like because again, League World music is very iconic. So like a lot of people like every year they're like, what's this year's League Worlds music? Because everyone's it's very nice, and like it's like a nice, like it's nice to see every year. So like, how did you come up with the, like, I don't know if you did, but like, do you know how bring like, yes, let's bring Little Nas X to the mains, like as a world song?
Yeah, honestly, I had nothing to do with it at all. I think he's an excellent performer, though. Super entertaining. We actually had the chance to, like, they did a dress rehearsal the day before, and me and the Comp Apps crew had a chance to like sit in and watch. Man, he's just so entertaining. The song was super fun. I had unfortunately nothing to do with the selection whatsoever. But I definitely do enjoy it as much as a fan as well.
Do you have a band or in mind or a singer you would love to see perform a world song?
Oh gosh, man. I don't know. It's hard to say. I feel like my choices would be not like I would love to see the Foo Fighters do it. I just feel like that'd be kind of
that would be sick.
But feasibly, again, I have nothing to do with the decision whatsoever.
Yeah.
I feel like feasibly, probably not the demographic they're going for world themes. But you never know. Dave Grohl could rock a world's anthem. I feel like.
What's been like your favorite League song?
Oh, definitely Rise.
Yes.
That not only is that the best song in my opinion, but that's the best video. That was so fire.
Yeah.
Like to this day, every time I watch it, it's just super, super, super badass. Like Faker at the very end as like Rise when they have like all the statues it's just super, super cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever always like talk to the music team afterwards and be like, yo, like this is like sick as like, do you ever talk to them afterwards and like get their mind of how they got like what was the idea and how they became like with the music video and the music, getting the talent, all that? Have you ever like picked their minds and seen like what their process is like? Do you know how it works?
Only like in passing, nothing too formal. Obviously there's a ton that goes into that. So honestly, I don't know too much. I do know that like a lot of them were at Worlds when Lil Nas performed, and seeing them be that excited and like it being performed live like that is like such an unreal experience. And so I know getting to be there is super, super cool.
Nice. Well, looking at our questions. Let's see.
We have like one.
Okay, so the last like question I guess on our list is if you had a tip for someone like just getting into esports in like any regard, what advice would you give them?
Sure. So it kind of goes back into what I said before, where there's no esports degree, right? Like, it's very common to ask the question of like, oh, do you come from gaming? But the reality is nobody comes from gaming, right? Like everyone is doing something else going into gaming. Yeah. So I would say my biggest advice is get as much experience as you possibly can in the things you're interested in. And what I mean by that is find in gaming or in esports what you like to do. For me, it was competitive operations. Find what you like to do and just research the shit out of it. Find people that are really good at it. Find people that are doing it in different companies. Find people that are doing it on an amateur level, a pro level, and then reach out to them. Hey, I'm interested in doing this. I just want to pick your brain. I want to get some information. And then just get as much experience as you can doing that kind of stuff. Find the resources around it, get involved, talk to the people within it. It's definitely going to take work to get to like a full-time job. I think you have to kind of put the time in to kind of make yourself a good applicant. But the more you do on the side, the more you're reaching out, the more proactive you are in making yourself the best candidate possible by getting all that knowledge and resources. It will definitely put you in the best place to be successful.
Yeah, I feel like over the years, like I feel like in the past 3 years, like esports has kind of like evolved in a way where it's like this is like a real thing. Like it's no longer just like, hey, I like this is kind of fun. Like no, it's like you can make a full-time job out of this. And especially with esports orgs, I know like you see a lot of these teams like not in the LCS, but like other like orgs are not part of like league, but like they're like shutting down. It's like, hey, we're not making money off this. Do you know like any of the reasons why you think esports is going through like essentially a recession or like this evolved? Do you think it's good for the business? Do you think it's bad for business? Like what is your opinion on it, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's hard to say. I think we're still really early in it. Even we had a team changeover this upcoming split. NRG is taking CLG's place. Mm-hmm. From the org side, I can't comment too much as like the intricacies of like of budget of running an org. I'm not overly familiar with. I know like general policies and stuff like that, but I think it's just a really interesting time across the board. It's kind of like never really happened before, so everyone's kind of working through it, kind of seeing what's going on, figuring out what to do. But I know that, like the orgs we work with at the LCS have a lot of super knowledgeable folks on the inside, people that really care a lot about the success. So, obviously I know they have the best interest at heart, and, we'll kind of see what happens.
Yeah, because I know like CLG was there since the beginning, so I know like yeah, I was gonna ask you, but I don't know if you're able to answer. Like, how did you feel when you heard like, hey, CLG is not gonna be in the split anymore?
You know what? I think for me personally, like working in comp ops, I love the folks at CLG. I talk to Greg Kim all the time, Jonathan McDaniel, really great. They super knowledgeable. They care a lot. Gonna miss them, but I think in one way or the other, the reality is it's a new team coming in. I've loved working with NRG so far. They're doing a great job on the Valorant side. They're super receptive to feedback and kind of are great at representing their brand. So I'm gonna miss the CLG folks a lot. Like it was really nice to work with them. But like I said, it's a new team, so we just kind of move along, get them in, make sure they're ready to rock and roll, and they're feeling good, and they're doing a good job so far.
Nice.
Yeah. I think it's also like that's a breath of fresh air because NRG is a very massive org. So like having them on like League is only gonna like exponentially.
That's a lot of fans to bring in.
Yeah, that's a lot of fans. So like it's very huge. So it's nice to see, and I think I hope like League is only like you guys just past 11 years I believe now of competitiveness. So like it's gonna be crazy what the next 10 years of it is, and like other esports like of course like Valorant. I know like you guys have taken like I think a lot of the mistakes maybe you might have been in League and you put it to Valorant. I don't know if you can comment on this. I know you're not part of it, but the Project L, the fighting game. Do you know anything regarding like how the development is going? At least, can you at least say something like that?
Literally nothing.
You know nothing about the Project L?
Even if I did, I couldn't say anything anyway.
You can't say anything. Damn.
I know. Virtually nothing. I think at one way or the other, I think the biggest goal at Riot is to make a really damn good game. That's the goal, right? Like I think in anything, having an esports scene and making sure your esports scene is great and solid is super important. But I think if the game is bad, nobody's gonna play it, and then esports is pointless anyway at that point. So I think I don't know nothing about it really, honestly, but I just know they want to make a really fun game.
All right. I think that's. I just want to try to sneak in there, just see if I get anything. Because I've DM'd like the people who are working on Project L, nothing. I got zero anything out of them. So I don't know. This was my best shot to ask anybody at least of anything. So I had to like shoot my shot. So we have a traditional question to end off the podcast. So we have two. We have two traditional questions we usually ask.
The first one is, have you ever had boba tea before?
I have had boba tea before.
Do you have a favorite flavor?
Okay, I'm gonna get judged so hard for this. Oh god, I really like the Oreo like cream brulee flavor. That's like the Oreo in the boba. Flavor. It's like so much sugar and it's like cop out boba. But I like chocolatey things a lot, and so being able to have that is really good. But I'm in LA, and so there's boba everywhere. We're really lucky if you like boba.
Is there like a chain of boba that's like everywhere in LA?
Boba Guys I believe that's what it's called. Boba Guys is everywhere. There's honestly just a lot. There's just like tons of boba places in general. Like anytime you want boba, any day, you can definitely find it.
Nice.
Riot also has food trucks that come to campus, and every Thursday is boba truck day, and so we had LCS on Thursdays. So I would go out and get or me or one of the comp ops people, depending on the day, would go out and get boba for all of the team and bring it back in for all of them to have. So that's definitely a nice treat.
You know if there are any openings on the sound team at Riot, so I could get some boba?
Hey, riotgames.com/careers. Everyone, everyone, everyone.
Okay, our second question.
Everyone,
this one we could be specific.
You give me there's a specific question to this. Do you know what a bidet is?
Everyone,
do you own one or have one?
Everyone.
Thank God.
Everyone.
Thank God.
He's like third person.
Everyone. 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 Everyone.
Thank God, someone is with me.
Everyone. 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 everyone, everyone,
No way!
everyone, 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 everyone.
Now at the Riot
everyone,
HQ, do they have bidets?
everyone, everyone.
So if you're at the
everyone,
HQ, do you just hold it throughout the day?
everyone, everyone,
Damn.
everyone, 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 everyone,
Yeah, because like I always feel like I think you should bring that up in the next board meeting. It's like you guys like we gotta bring something along.
Hey guys, we gotta improve
we gotta-
the work life.
I feel like work life and like happiness overall and the business throughout is gonna exponentially grow. It's gonna be insane if you guys have the days in the Riot HQ.
Everyone, everyone,
Perfect. Well, I think that's all our questions we have for today. Thank you again for coming on. I appreciate you, everyone, for you coming on and bringing a light on what you guys do in the behind the scenes and everything. If you want to plug anything, if you know if there's an announcement that's gonna happen, because this gets posted on Friday. Oh no, I'm sorry, Saturday. Saturday. So Saturday around 12 p.m. That's where it is gonna get posted. So if you have any announcements, you want to plug anything in before that happens?
Everyone, 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 everyone,
Thanks for coming on. Thank you guys for listening. Appreciate everything. Like, follow, subscribe, and goodbye.
everyone, everyone,